trying to find the way to walk. Lord, I humble myself before thee. I don't want to be lost. I've been taught to search the scriptures and read the word of truth. Like you said, just like you promised, I'll be just like you. How can you get to believe? Take the time out just to read. You will find that you've been wrong. Jesus is coming to his home to take his rest in Zion. You won't get to heaven. No, 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 no. And I know it's true, 'cause I read it. Hey, all you got to do is just receive it. Hey. Open up your Bible.
Hello, and welcome to the Israel of God and to the Bible Speaks television program. Today, on our regular scheduled Wednesday night question and answer session, we will be giving you a 1-hour presentation of When We Were Kings. We are doing this lesson in honor of Black History Month, and this is a lesson that is going to inform you about our history, a part of our history that we don't know, that we don't ever hear anything about. Our history that we deal with during this Black History Month is the history of African Americans here in America. But we never hear about our history or what it was that we were doing before we got to America. And this lesson is going to reveal who we are as a people before the shores of America. We're going to start this lesson out in Jeremiah, the 2nd chapter. Jeremiah 2, and we're going to pick it up at verse 10, because the history of African Americans here in the United States is a history of slavery. It's a history of oppression, injustice, and inequality. And we have only been in this country for 396 years. And beyond that, nobody knows who we are. They tell us that we came from Africa. But Africa is a continent. Yes, sir. And everybody else in the world is referred to by a country off of a continent. Europe is a continent. But on the continent of Europe, you have Germans, you got Italians, you have British, you have Polish, and they're all white, but they're not all the same people. On the continent of Africa, you got multiple countries on that continent. You got Egypt, you got Ethiopia, you got Morocco, Liberia, Kenya, Rwanda. They're all black, but they're not all the same people. But when it comes to us African Americans, they just say we're Africans. But they never tell you what country off the continent of Africa we come from. And they keep records. And the world know, but we as a people don't know. But today, if you pay attention to this lesson, you will find out who we are and what life was like for us before the shores of America. We're going to start this lesson out in Jeremiah, like I said, the 2nd chapter, verse 10. All right, my brother, go ahead.
So pass over the isles of Chittim and see, and send it to Kedar, and consider diligently, and see if there be such a thing. Have a nation changed their gods, which are yet no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which doeth not profit.
So the Lord, by the mouth of the prophet Jeremiah, is telling the people to go and pass over all of these different countries and look at the inhabitants of the world. The same gods that they had, they still have them today. But this people, the people of Israel, have changed their God for gods that are no gods. Go ahead on and read.
Be astonished, O ye heavens, at this, and be horribly afraid. Be ye very desolate, saith the Lord. For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water.
And look what this 13th verse said. My people, the Lord is talking about a particular people here, and that people that he is referring to is none other than Israel. He said, we have committed 2 evils. We have forsaken him, the fountain of living waters, and we have hewn ourselves out vessels that can hold no water. Go ahead on and read.
Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled?
And this is a question that's being asked about this people. Are we a homeborn slave? Because like I said, the history of this African American is none other than the history of slavery, oppression, injustice, and inequality. And the Lord is asking the question by the mouth of the prophet Jeremiah, are we homeborn slaves? Why are we in this condition? Let's go over to Daniel, the 9th chapter, because our history is contained in this book, which is the Bible. Not only is it our history, it tells about the true and living God, the creator and maker of all things that therein is, plus it tells about all of the other inhabitants of the world. Daniel chapter 9, we're going to pick it up at verse 7. Daniel 9 and 7. All right, my brother, go ahead.
O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces as at this day. To the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass they have trespassed against thee.
You see what this verse tells us? Unto the Lord belong righteousness, but unto this people Israel belong confusion of faces. And it is because of the trespass that we have trespassed against the true and living God that he has driven us in all of the countries of the world. This man could not come and get a whole nation of people and do what he have done to us if not the Lord allowed it to happen. Yes, the Lord operates through men. And it is the Lord who has caused this people that is referred to as African Americans to be in the condition that they are in because of the trespass that this people have trespassed against him. Continue to read.
O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes.
Wait, to our kings? To our kings and to our princes. We don't know nothing about no king. Only thing that we know that we came over here on a slave ship and we've been picking cotton and been getting hit by the whip and we have been treated bad by the white establishment ever since we landed here. We don't know nothing about we used to have a king. We didn't know nothing about we had princes. But the scriptures say, to the Lord our God belongeth mercies and forgiveness. He said, to our kings and to our princes and to our fathers, right? Go ahead.
Because we have sinned against thee.
Because we have sinned against him, what happened? Go ahead.
To the Lord our God belongeth mercies and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God, to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him.
You see what has happened? Because we have trespassed and not obeyed the voice of the Lord our God, and we have sinned against him. Therefore, the curse that is written in the law of Moses is poured upon us. You go into the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, and you pick it up at verse 15 until the end of the chapter, about verse 68, you'll read about the curses. From verse 1 to 15, you'll read about the blessings that would have bestowed this people had we obeyed the voice of the Lord. But we did not obey his voice. Therefore, the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. And you can find all this information in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. But continue to read.
And he hath confirmed his word, which he spake against us, and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven have not been done as has been done upon Jerusalem.
You see what he say? Under the whole heaven. And there has been a lot of atrocities that has taken place on this world against different peoples. But I don't care what another nation has gone through. No nation in the world has gone through what we, this African American, has gone through in his history as a people. Go ahead on and read.
As it is written in the law of Moses, all this evil has come upon us, yet made we not our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth.
Even though we're going through all this evil, in this present day, children being shot down in the streets by their peers as well as by the people who are hired to serve and protect us. We're dying in the streets, but we're not considering, nor are we making our plea to the Lord our God. We're looking for the government. We're looking for some other man to save us from this, but we're not going to the only somebody who can really help us, which is the Lord our God. Read verse 14.
Therefore have the Lord watched upon the evil, and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice.
Therefore we have not brought our petition to the Lord, even though we are a church-going people. The books say, therefore have the Lord watched upon the evil, and brought it upon us, for the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice. So by us not doing what thus saith the true and living God, this is why we're in the condition that we're in as a people. And as the book has just told us, under the whole heaven has not been done as what has been done unto Israel. We are the absolute only people on the planet that is not referred to by a country off of a continent. Now we're going to go to the blackboard and we're going to put some information up here. The present year is 2015. In the year 1619, the first slaves arrived here in America. If you subtract the year 1619 from our present year 2015, that will leave you with 396 years. This is far back as our history goes. As far back as we can trace our lineage, 396 years when we landed on the shores of America. But nobody told us what we were doing, what life was like for us before we came to America. Now we read in the book about kings and princes, something that we have never heard about. Nobody has never told us. They didn't conceal this information from us. But through the grace of the Most High God and the words of the prophets, that information is getting ready to be revealed unto us today. Let's go back and walk this down. Let's go into Genesis, the 25th chapter. Because of a time restraint, we're going to try to give you as much information as we can in this hour time period that's allotted to us. And we're going to try to be moving kind of fast. So we encourage you to take notes. And this is going to be recorded, so you will be able to get copies of this on CD or DVD. But we're going right now to the 25th chapter of Genesis to look at our beginning. Genesis 25, and we're going to start reading at verse 19. Genesis 25 and 19. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac.
Because Abraham is the patriarch of our family. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat two children. Go ahead on and read.
And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian of Padanaram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived.
Because Rebekah couldn't have children, so Isaac prayed unto the Lord on behalf of his wife. The Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and his wife became pregnant. She conceived. Go ahead on and read.
And the children struggled together within her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord.
If this is a blessing from God, why are these children struggling in my womb and this pregnancy so hard? She went to ask to the Lord. Go ahead on and read.
And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger.
You got 2 nations in your womb, and you got 2 manner of people. So she got twins in her womb. And each one of these children is going to grow into its own separate nation. One is going to be stronger than the other, and the one who is born first is going to serve the younger. Go ahead and read verse 24.
And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb.
There was twins in her womb. Not identical twins, fraternal twins. Go ahead on and read.
And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau.
The elder is going to serve the younger. So Esau is the oldest of the twins. And that means Esau is going to have to serve the next child to come out of the womb. Go ahead.
And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
So Isaac wife gave birth to two children, Esau and Jacob. Esau was born first, Jacob was born second, and the Lord told Rebekah before these children was born that it was going to be two nations in his womb. Two manner of people. One was going to be stronger than the other, and the oldest is going to serve the younger. Esau is the oldest, Jacob is the younger, so Esau is going to have to serve Jacob. Skip down to verse 29 and go ahead.
And Jacob saw pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom.
Now we got another name here, Edom. Edom and Esau is one and the same. Edom means red. Esau was a hunter, Jacob was a farmer. Jacob was making him some stew from his vegetables and whatnot that he grew. Esau went out the field to shoot him some wild game. He out there in the field all day long, don't kill nothing. He come back hungry. He asked his brother to feed him with some of that red pottage that he had made. Therefore his name is called Edom. So if you hear of Edom or if you hear of Esau, we are talking about the same people. Go ahead and read.
And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright.
Jacob is the younger child, right? Esau is the elder. So Esau is asking Jacob for his food. Jacob said, I'll feed you, but it's going to come at a price. It's going to come at the birthright. The birthright is the inheritance that the oldest son get from the father when the father died. Esau is the eldest, so when Isaac died, everything that belonged to Isaac would have went to Esau. But now Jacob tells Esau, if you want some of what I got, then it's going to cost you the birthright. Let's see what Esau say. Go ahead on and read.
And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?
Right now, he's so hungry, he feels as though he's going to die if he don't get him nothing to eat, right? So if I die, the birthright ain't going to do me no good no way. It's going to go to you anyway, right? So what do Esau do? Go ahead.
And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob.
Esau sold his birthright unto Jacob for a bowl of food. The story goes that Jacob stole it from him. But we have read it with our own eyes that Esau sold his birthright unto Jacob, right? Go ahead on and read it, verse 34.
Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright.
The Bible says Esau despised his birthright because he didn't think it more valuable than a bowl of food. Now, when Isaac died, what would have went to Esau is going to go to Jacob, right? Because Esau have despised his birthright. Now, our father's name is Jacob. But let's go into the 35th chapter of Genesis and see what happened to him. Genesis chapter 35. Genesis 35, and we're going to pick it up in verse 9. Genesis 35 and verse 9. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came out of Padanaram and blessed him.
Now, notice what we got going here. Back in these days, God is talking to our forefathers. Isaac prayed unto the Lord on his wife Rebekah's behalf, and the Lord heard Isaac's prayer and blessed her to conceive, right? Sure. Now when she having a hard pregnancy, she go to inquire of the Lord, why is it thus? And the Lord answer her and give her the reason why, right? Now we have God appearing unto Jacob again when he came out of Padanaram and blessed him. Continue to read.
And God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob.
He said, your name is Jacob? Go ahead.
Thy name should not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel.
God changed our father Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. And Israel means a prince with power with God and man. Go ahead on and read.
And God said unto him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins.
So out of Jacob, who God changed name to Israel, he said, a nation and a company of nations shall come out of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins, right? Go ahead on and read verse 12.
And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land.
Because Abraham is the patriarch. That which Abraham possessed, it went to his son Isaac. Now that Esau have despised his birthright, now it's going to go from Isaac to Jacob, who God changed name to Israel instead of going to Esau. So therefore, the protocol go from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, not Abraham to Ishmael. Neither do it go from Abraham to from Isaac to Esau. It go Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we see the Lord performing all this, right? Mm-hmm. Now, skip down to verse 23 because we need to see the names of all of Israel's children. Skip down to verse 23 and continue.
The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon and Levi, and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun.
Now, Leah, because Jacob had two wives. Leah was his first wife. And out of Leah was born Reuben, that was his firstborn. He had Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. His second wife was Rachel. Go ahead on and read.
The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin.
So Joseph and Benjamin was out of his second wife. But now each one of his wives had handmaids. And he had children by his wife's handmaids. He had 12 sons and one daughter with 4 different women. Go ahead on and read.
And the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali.
Go ahead.
The sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob which were born to him in Padanaram.
So these are the 12 tribes of Israel right here that was born unto him in Padanaram, the area where God blessed him and changed his name to Israel. Now, one of the sons that was born to Jacob was a son named Joseph. Now, Jacob had his first son, and we're going to go and do something here, because Jacob is the father of our people, something that the world has never told us, right? Jacob has his first son in 1760 BC. He has his last son in 1732 BC. He had 12 sons and he had one daughter in a period of 28 years. So now, once again, our present year is 2015. The last son born unto Jacob was 1732 BC. And we are in the AD right now. So when you deal with the BC and the AD, you have to add. And when you add this together, you come up with 3,747 years. As a people, as of this year, we are 3,747 years old. 3,747 years ago, the fathers of our nation was in place.
Yes, sir.
But we only know 396 years of our history since we landed here in America, right? Where is the rest of the time? This is what has been concealed from us, but this is something that we are going to shed light on tonight. Now, let me show you something that happened before America with our people. One of Jacob's or Israel's children was named Joseph, right? Joseph was born in 1745 BC. He was sold into slavery by his brothers because his brothers was jealous of him. You heard about Joseph and his multicolored coat? And he was one of his father's favorites because he was a child of his father's old age. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he allowed Joseph to be able to see visions and interpret dreams. And his brothers was jealous of him, so his brothers sold him to the Midianites, which are Arabs. The Arabs, in turn, sold him to the Egyptians in the year 1729 BC when he was 16 years old. He was made a ruler in Egypt in the year 1715 BC at the age of 30 years old. So now, let's look at something here. We always start off with our present year so we can date this thing, right? And in 1715 BC, Joseph was made ruler in Egypt. When you add this here together, you get 3,730 years. 730 years ago. 3,730 years ago. A member of our family became the second ruler in the greatest civilization of that time, Egypt, ancient Egypt. Nobody never told us about that, right? But the Bible gonna tell you about it. Let's go into Psalms 105th chapter. Psalms 105. Psalms 105, and we're gonna pick it up at verse 17. And like I said, we're gonna move kind of fast, so I got a lot of information that I gotta give you. So when you get there, go ahead. Psalms 105 and verse 17. All right, my brother, go ahead.
He sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant, whose feet they hurt with fetters. He was laid in iron.
Now they sold him as a slave, and his feet was hurt in fetters, and he was laid away in irons. This is the form of slavery. That's what they do to slaves, don't they? They put you in chains. When we got in chains over here in America, it wasn't new. This is the way they treat slaves. So his brothers sold him to the Midianites. The Midianites sold him as a slave to the Egyptians, and they put him in chains and fetters. But go ahead on and read.
Until the time that his word came, the word of the Lord tried him. The king sent and loosed him, even the ruler of the people, and let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his substance.
Pharaoh made Joseph lord of his house and ruler over all his substance when he was 30 years old. He became second in command. The only person who was higher in the land of Egypt than our father Joseph was Pharaoh. Go ahead on and read.
To bind his princes at his pleasure and teach his senators wisdom.
You see that? To bind the Egyptian princes at his pleasure. If he needed to lock them up, set them down, or exhort authority over them, he had the power to do so. And our father, Joseph, taught the senators of Egypt wisdom. See, all black people ain't the same. Even though we the same color, we ain't the same. You go and call an Ethiopian a Rwandan, he will correct you. You call a Nigerian a Kenyan, he will correct you. But they all Africans, ain't they? And they all the same color. But they come from different countries off of that continent. And even though we look like the Egyptians, we are a different people from them. And it was us who taught the senators of Egypt wisdom 3,730 years ago. Nobody told us that. Let's go into Exodus, the 3rd chapter. Exodus 3. And when you get there, we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Because we're going to look at a man called Moses. And everybody that been to church, whether you've been to church on Sunday or whether you've been to church here at the Israel of God on the Lord's Sabbath day, everybody know about Moses, and don't nobody kick about him, right? But Moses was one of ours. And ain't nobody ever told us that.
Yes, sir.
Moses was one of ours. Exodus 3 and 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, while the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the afflictions of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows.
Look how the true and living God identified himself to one of our forefathers, Moses. He told Moses, I am God Almighty. And I appeared unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as the Almighty God, right? He telling Moses, I didn't see the affliction of my people in Egypt, right? He said, my people didn't. Because Israel is holy unto the Lord. Israel is the Lord's firstborn. Go ahead on and read.
And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites.
All of these names that he just read are children of Canaan. These are all so-called Africans. These are Ham's children, right? The land Israel is on the continent of Africa. It is a country on the continent of Africa. And the original name of that land was the land of Canaan. And the Lord said he had come down to deliver us to the place of the Canaanites, didn't he? And you had 7 nations to come under the Canaanites. So the original land of Israel was Canaan. Then it got the name of Israel after we inhabited it. Once we went into slavery, it went to Palestine. And in 1948, once the United Nations took the children of Esau back over there and gave them our land, they changed it back to Israel. Once the Army Corps of Engineers went over there and dug out the Suez Canal, they separated it from the continent of Africa and called it the Middle East. But Israel, Syria, and Jordan and all of that sits on the continent of Africa. So yeah, we land-based come from Africa. But what country out of Africa did we come from? We come from the land of Israel. Go ahead on and read it, verse 9.
Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come up unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them.
Where the Egyptians oppressed us. This is black on black crime. These are the first oppressors of our people, Egyptians. Now we trying to claim that we Egyptians. Go ahead on and read.
Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
The Lord God commissioned one of ours, Moses, to go unto that Egyptian Pharaoh to say, let my people go. Let's go into Exodus the 11th chapter. Exodus chapter 11. Because once the Lord get ready to deliver us out of Egypt, and we was there in hard bondage for 400 years, the Lord want us to do something. Exodus 11, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 11 and 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When ye shall let you go, ye shall surely thrust you out of hence altogether. Speak now the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people.
Now, let's go over to the 12th chapter of Exodus. Turn right over to the 12th chapter of Exodus and pick it up at verse 35. Like I said, because of the time restraint, we're going to be moving kind of fast. But after this is over, you'll be able to ask some questions and things of that nature. Verse 35, Exodus 12 and 35. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment.
So now, after 400 years of captivity in Egypt, the Lord is getting ready to deliver us out of that land. And he said borrow, but we borrowed gold, silver, clothing, and everything in great numbers. Look at what this next verse says. Go ahead to verse 36.
And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things that they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians.
Spoil is another word for rob. And we robbed the Egyptians. We got paid in one day for 400 years of service.
Yes, sir.
Let's turn over to the 25th chapter of the same book of Exodus. Because the Lord gave a whole nation a 400-year paycheck in one day. And now, when the Lord bless you, he requires something of you. Exodus 25, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 25 and 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart, he shall take my offering.
Now the Lord wants an offering. He wants you to give back unto him, but he wants you to give it willingly. He don't want you to begrudge what you're going to give to him for all of the goodness that he has bestowed upon you. Go ahead on and read.
And this is the offering which you shall take of them, gold and silver and brass.
Where did we get all this gold, silver, and brass from? We got it from out of Egypt, didn't we? Go ahead on and read.
And blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and ram skins dyed red, and badger skins, and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones that be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary that I might dwell among them.
Let them make me a dwelling place. That's what a sanctuary is, right? That I could be right here in the midst of my people. The Lord want to be amongst his people.
Amen.
And I want you to take all this stuff and build me a house that I could dwell right in the midst of my people. Go ahead and read that next verse.
According to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it.
So he is getting ready to give him a blueprint of how he wants him to build a sanctuary for him. Let's go over to the 26th chapter of Exodus, and we're going to read verse 1 and skip. Exodus 26 and 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
Moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet, with cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them.
Okay, now skip down to verse 30 and continue.
And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereon which was showed thee in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work, with cherubim shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood, overlaid with gold. The hook shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony, and the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy place. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place.
Now this is the sanctuary that the Lord wanted the children of Israel to make for him so that he could dwell in the midst of them. And the materials that they built this is what they got from the Egyptians when he delivered us out of Egypt. Okay? Now, I got some history called The Treasures of the House of the Lord. And in this history, it tells us that Moses was also instructed to construct a large portable tabernacle or tent entrusted to the care of the priest of Aaron. A detailed description of this tabernacle is given in Exodus, the 25th through the 30th chapters, some of which we just read, right? The tabernacle was built by free will offering, donated by the people in such generous amounts that more than enough material was available. Because we robbed the Egyptians, didn't we? Because the Lord showed favor to Israel in the Egyptian sight, and they gave us everything we asked for. The material assembled for the tabernacle as described in detail in Exodus the 35th through the 38th chapters and summarized in Exodus 38, 21 through 30. The total quantity of gold collected was approximately 1 ton. Now, the gold was 1 ton, of silver 3 3/4 tons, of bronze 2.5 tons. At today's prices, as of yesterday, the price of gold was $1,234.80 per troy ounce. We had a ton of gold that was used in this tabernacle. We had 3 3/4 tons of silver used in this tabernacle. As of yesterday, silver was $17.05 an ounce. So today, if we had to build that same tabernacle that our forefathers built for the Lord almost, 4,000 years ago? The value of gold today would be $36,013,929.84. The value of silver would be $1,724,929.21. The total value of the silver and gold altogether would be $37,738,859.05. If we had to build the same tent, portable tabernacle for the true and living God today that our forefathers built almost 4,000 years ago, this is the kind of money it would cost today. This is how we were when we were kings. But the world ain't told us nothing about that. We never know or knew that we did things of that nature. But this is how our forefathers did things. Now, let's go into Acts the 13th chapter. Let's go into Acts the 13th chapter and pick it up at verse 17. Acts 13, and pick it up at verse 17, because we're going to look at a brief history, summary of our past history before America. Acts 13 and 17. All right, my brother, go ahead.
The God of this people of Israel chose our fathers and exalted the people when they dwelt as strangers in the land of Egypt.
You see what it says? The God of this people chose our fathers when we dealt as strangers in the land of Egypt. Go ahead on and read.
And with a high arm brought he them out of it. And about the time of 40 years suffered he their manners in the wilderness.
Because we walked around in the wilderness for 40 years. Go ahead on and read.
And when he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he divided their land to them by lot.
He said he was going to give us the land of the Canaanites, right? Mm-hmm. And those other 7 nations that come under Canaan, he divided it to us by lot. Go ahead on and read.
And after that, he gave unto them judges by the space of 450 years.
We had judges who ruled over our people for about 450 years once we came into the land. Go ahead.
Until Samuel the prophet. And afterward they desired a king.
Now, we doing good because we got the true and living God right there with us. Then he raised up the prophet Samuel unto us. But Samuel's children got kind of wicked and got greedy. So now we see the rest of the nations, because before this, we grew up as a nation in slavery in Egypt. He walked us around in the wilderness for 40 years where we was totally segregated from the rest of the world. We didn't come around other people until we got into the promised land. Now, after a period of 450 years of being in our own land, being around other people, seeing them with kings and seeing what they do, we desire a king. We go to the prophet Samuel and say, make us a king so that we can be like all the other nations around about us. The thing troubled Samuel. And Samuel went and prayed unto the Lord, and the Lord said, give them what they asked for, and don't let this thing bother you, because they are not rejecting you, Samuel. They are rejecting me, because I'm Israel's king. So now we turning our back on the Lord and starting to get in trouble. Go ahead on and read.
Verse 21. And afterward they desired a king, and God gave unto them Saul, the son of Cis, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years.
Saul was the first king of Israel. He served for 40 years. Go ahead on and read.
And when he had removed him, he raised up unto him them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. Of this man's seed have God, according to his promise, raised up Israel a Savior, Jesus.
Jesus came through the seed of David.
Yes, sir.
And God anointed David, the second king of Israel, and he reigned for 40 years. And David's son Solomon preceded him, and he reigned for 40 years. Yes. In a history of a complete nation, we had 3 kings that served 40 years apiece, 120 years. Then after that, the kingdom got divided. Now, our last king was Solomon, and that was David's son. And the Lord showed some goodness unto Solomon, and we're going to take a look at that because this lesson is entitled, When We Were Kings. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 3. 1 Kings 3, and we're going to pick it up at verse 5. 1 Kings 3 and verse 5. All right, my brother, when you get it, just go ahead.
In Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said, thou hast shown unto thy servant David, my father, great mercy, according as he hath walked before thee in truth and in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with thee. And thou hast kept him from this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son to sit on his throne as it is this day.
Now look and pay attention to what's going on here. We got God talking to another one of our Solomon, right? This is all stuff that's happening to our people before captivity in America, that the world have not revealed unto us, and we've been reading this Bible, and we've been going to somebody's church all our lives, and we ain't never heard that this history here pertain unto us. So God come to Solomon and asked him, what did he want? And Solomon is talking back to God. Continue to read.
And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. And thy servant is in the midst of thy people which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge the people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?
So Solomon asked the Lord for wisdom to be able to judge God's people. Go ahead on and read.
And the speech pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. And God said unto him, Because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches of thyself, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment, behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall any arise like unto thee.
Solomon has the reputation from God as being the wisest man in the world.
Yes, sir.
And Solomon was one of ours.
Yes, sir.
This is when we were kings, something that the world ain't revealed unto us. Go ahead on and read.
And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honor, so that there should not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. And if thou wilt walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then will I lengthen thy days.
Look at what the Lord did for one of ours. He gave him wisdom unsurpassed, and he gave him riches unsurpassed. And he told him that if you obey me and walk according to my commandments like David your father, I will give you long life. This is what was going on with us before we came to America. Now let's go to 2 Chronicles, the 3rd chapter. 2 Chronicles chapter 2. Because after the Lord blessed Solomon with this wisdom and riches, Solomon wants to build a house for the Lord. 2 Chronicles, 3rd chapter, pick it up at verse 1. 2 Chronicles 3 and 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem and Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And they began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month in the 4th year of his reign.
So now Solomon is beginning to build the first temple, permanent house in Jerusalem. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 10. 1 Kings chapter 10. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. 1 Kings 10 and 1. When you get there, my brother, go ahead. 1 Kings 10 and verse 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions.
Now Solomon then built the temple of the Lord. Now the queen of Sheba then heard about Solomon and his wisdom. So she going to come to prove him. She going to ask him hard questions. Go ahead on and read.
And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bear spices, and very much gold, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart.
When she came to Solomon, she didn't come to make love to Solomon. She come to question him and test his wisdom. And she didn't come without bearing gifts. Go ahead on and read.
And Solomon told her of all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king, which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up into the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her.
When she saw the way he carried himself, and all his servants around him, and the majesty and the tapestry of him, she fainted. There wasn't no more spirit left in her. Go ahead on and read.
And she said to the king, It was a true report that I heard in my own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit, I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes have seen it. And behold, the half was not told to me.
She said, I heard about you, but I didn't believe it. And now that I have seen it with my own eyes, they didn't tell me the half of it. Go ahead on and read.
Thy wisdom and prosperity exceeded the fame which I heard.
Your wisdom and your prosperity exceed what I done heard. Skip down and read verse 10.
And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices very great store, and precious stone. There came no more such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon.
Okay, now Solomon built the house of the Lord, and the temple that Solomon built. If we had to build that same temple today, it would cost $13,735,214,251.62. If we had to build that same temple that our forefathers built back then today, this is the value of the silver and gold that it would take to build this temple. They told you about the queen of Sheba bringing Solomon a gift to talk to him, right? What she brought Solomon was $216,083,597.04 if you had to take the gold that she brought him back there today at today's prices. This is what she would have had to pay to go see and talk to Solomon, one of ours. This is how life was for us when we were kings. Yes, see, this is why the Romans, when they come and sack Jerusalem in the 70 AD, they tore it down brick by brick, and they set it on fire, and gold is a soft metal. And when that gold got hot, it started melting like water, running through the bricks, and they plundered it. They didn't tear down the temple just to be evil, to tear the building down. They tore it down for the money. Now, let's look at something else. Let's show you about something else. This present year is 2015. In 6005 BC, Nebuchadnezzar came and sacked Jerusalem and tore down that temple that Solomon built, and he took away some captives. And this was 2,620 years ago. And one of the captives that he took was none other than the prophet Daniel. Let's go into the book of Daniel, the first chapter, and pick it up at verse 1. Daniel 1 and verse 1. Daniel 1 and 1. When you get it, my brother, go ahead. Daniel 1 and 1. All right, go ahead.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, which part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels to the treasure of the house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes.
Now he's going to bring certain of the king's seed and children of the princes into Babylon with the treasures that he had brought out of the temple. Go ahead on and read.
Children of whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand at the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Now, this took place 2,620 years ago, right? They came, the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, the Gentiles, and they came and took our city, and they took our people and put them into captivity in the Babylon, right? Now look at what they said about our children. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skilled in all wisdom. We wasn't no savages, and we wasn't ignorant. And cunning in knowledge and understanding science, and such as had the ability to stand in kings' palaces, whom they might teach the learning, the tongue of the Chaldeans. That they could teach us their language so that we in turn can come back and teach them some sense. Because this is what life was like for us before the shores of America. But nobody told us that this history in this book pertained unto us. They want to give it to somebody else. Now, let's look at something else. Like I said, we're moving kind of fast and we're running out of time, and I want to get this pertinent information into you. The present day is 2015, and the Romans came and sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. That was 1,945 years ago. 1,945 years ago, the last vestige of our people was removed out of the land of Jerusalem, never to go back again, okay? So now, you know how the Dome of the Rock got there? Because we wasn't at home. You know why Esau and them Arabs is fighting over the land right now? Because the real inhabitants of the land ain't at home. And it wasn't until 1948 that the United Nations got together and put Esau back in that land, and Ishmael, the Arabs, had it ever since the 7th century, and they built the Dome of the Rock on it because the land was left vacant. This is why the battle goes on, and we are slaves, not known to nobody, because we don't know our history. So now, 1,945 years ago is when the last time we was at home. We've been in America for 396 years. That means we had 1,549 years of captivity all over Europe and every place else before we even came to America. Because we only been here for 396 years. We 3,747 years old as a people. And for 1,549 years before we came to the shores of America, history, if you go into Leviticus, the 26th chapter, for which we don't have time to read it right now, but you go into Leviticus, the 26th chapter, you read the first and second verse, you skip down and read verses 14 through 18, you read the 33rd verse and the 38th verse, it'll tell you about this 1,549 years of lowliness and obscurity before the shores of America. So now, let's wind this up by looking at this here. We 3,747 years old as a people. Okay? We've been in captivity 2,835 years. If you subtract that, it leaves you with 912 years. As a people, we have only been free for 912 years. We don't know what freedom is like.
No, sir. No, sir.
We was in captivity for 400 years in Egypt. We was in captivity for 490 years in Babylon. It has been 1,945 years since Titus sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. And of that 1,945 years since 70 AD, 396 of those years have been spent here in America. So this is what life was like when we was kings before the shores of America. This traces your history back 3,747 years, not just the 396 years since America. Let's go to our last place. Let's go to Zechariah, the 8th chapter. Zechariah chapter 8, because like I say, our history has been a history of slavery, but we're going to show you something real quick. Zechariah 8, and start reading at verse 1. Zechariah 8 and 1. When you get it, my brother, just go ahead. Zechariah 8 and 1. Zechariah, the 8th chapter, start reading at verse 1. All right, my brother, go ahead.
Again, the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Thus said the Lord of hosts, I was zealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Thus said the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mount of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain.
I am returned unto Zion. I ain't taking you to heaven. Go ahead on and read.
Thus said the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, every man with his staff in his hand for very age. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets thereof. Thus said the Lord of hosts, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, shall it be also marvelous in mine eyes, said the Lord of hosts?
When we get home, and it be a marvelous thing to be back in the streets of our land, and it be a marvelous thing in our eyes, what you think it'll be in the eyes of God who has scattered us all over the world because of our disobedience? When we were kings, this is our history before the shores of America. I thank you for your time, and I hope somebody got something out of this lesson.